Got it correct. 4-8. We got Ty Hudson here from Tusk Talk with Ty. It's right here on YouTube, talking some Arkansas football. And of course, after a 2-year run to postseason competition, Arkansas will sit on the sideline, spend those holidays at home, and try to fix themselves through the National Signing Day that's coming up in about 3 weeks and the transfer portal. Ty, how you doing today?
Mark, I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing just fine. Good to see you as always. Before we dive into all of that, of course, it took most of us back a bit when we saw the news about Bobby Petrino. So here's my response. It would be simply that, okay, I understand he's a tremendous offensive mind. He knows the lay of the land at Arkansas. From a just nuts and bolts job standpoint, I get it. But why go there if there are other suitable candidates? Why just do they really need that extra baggage?
So Arkansas fans obviously will know and understand this. There are some that are kind of living in denial on what I'm about to say. This was absolutely a Hail Mary to get to bring back fan interest and to maybe cool off the heat that Sam Pittman has gotten this year. I mean, there's no doubt the last 2 years, last year they underachieved, but they still made a bowl game. They beat a good Kansas team in their bowl game. This year was atrocious. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Offensive line issues, skill position players just not really living up to the hype, and KJ struggling even with when he had the rare times that he had a clean pocket. His percentages, his numbers, I looked at them every week. They were not good, and you could see it with your own eyes. You didn't have to look at a stat sheet or any further analysis or anything like that. You could see it with your own eyeballs. My gosh, this team was bad last year, and it's when you think about it, it's actually kind of nuts to think they went into Gainesville and won that game in overtime, even though Florida wasn't that good to begin with. By the way, first time they've ever won in Gainesville in Arkansas's history. Not that they've played there a lot. Things were bad. Hog Twitter, I mean, it was just a dumpster fire. All of social media, fan interaction, and I deal with people who they're not on social media. They just come through and watch my show, and that's all they do. And they were saying they were talking about, I'm not buying any more merch. I'm not going to the games. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of that. This is just atrocious. We shouldn't be this bad. There was a time when Arkansas football was respected, and I get it. I'm 40. That hasn't been very often in my lifetime. But, back in the Southwest Conference days, they were considered one of the top 2, top 3 teams year in and year out in that conference. They've just not been anywhere near that close other than the 4 years they had Bobby Petrino. And he won 21 games in 2 years, which doesn't happen often here, even in the Southwest Conference days. Doesn't happen often. They knew, well, there's a way to create some energy, to breathe a little bit more life, a lot more life into the program. It was definitely a PR move. Now, I've said this a number of times on my show. It's a PR move that could still work out, as you put it, the nuts and bolts. He's an offensive mind. It could still work out, look like a desperate move to bring fans back, and also have the effect of having a better product on the field in 2024, which is not hard to do. They don't have a tall order, Mark. I really, and again, another thing fans aren't probably going to agree with me on, but because they brought Bobby back, I could see them going 6-6 and Sam still keeping his job and giving Petrino a second year as the OC, because, we hear all the time, well, it takes a couple of years. Takes a couple of years in Petrino's system. It can be a little complicated, and they're going to have to probably bring in a quarterback. And I know we're going to talk about that here in a minute, but I think this was a move that saved Sam maybe even another 2 years. We'll see. I know contracts. I don't know all the ins and outs of his contract. We know his buyout gets cheaper. Hunter Yurachek's, I'm not going to say he was truly on a hot seat, because I don't buy that. Everything else is doing great. Baseball is still baseball at Arkansas. Dave Van Horn is still killing it here, right? You got Eric Musselman, who's probably got maybe one of the best teams on his hands. And by the way, you've made 3 straight Sweet 16s with a couple of back-to-back Elite Eights. Women's sports are killing it. I realize football buys all this. I understand that, but I don't truly believe that his butt was really on a hot seat. But Sam's definitely was. Now, I do also think there's a strong possibility that this wasn't Sam's doing. He might have been forced either from a BOT, Hunter Yurachek, somebody, a major booster with a lot of influence. Could have been that as well. I don't know. But I do think this was a move that probably will guarantee Sam at least another couple of years, assuming, they don't crap their pants next year like they did this year.
So that's funny that it turns out to be the exact opposite as from what it hit me and other people as, oh, this might be a good football move, but why would you do this? Because you're just bringing back all this baggage and memories of the past and all that embarrassment. Why are you bringing that back?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're telling me, no, for the faithful, that's a move that you do make.
Oh my gosh.
To bring back. Okay. Interesting.
You and I were talking before we went live, and I've noticed this in all the years I've done YouTube. Okay. God bless the content creators. All right. I am a big fan of independent content creators, big fan of yours. It's part of the reason why I started watching your show before you had me on. I like independent content, truly independent content creators. But when things go good and when you have this kind of excitement, I've seen it before. All of a sudden, new channel, new podcast, new Arkansas podcast, new Razorback. And that's great. Again, power to the content creator. Oh my God. When Petrino was brought back, and of course it all happens on the same day they introduce Edge, which is this new NIL, a way to get fans to buy into NIL. A really smart move. All in the same day. Arkansas beats a top 10 Duke team in Bud Walton. Bud Walton's going crazy. It's a wide out. All this stuff. It's insane. That's how you knew. Like, fans are going nuts. I mean, anytime a new coaching search hire came up on my channel, whether it's an OC or whether it's a head coach, always, I would have bring back Bobby. Bring back Bobby. Time to bring him back. It was the most common name. If I were to do a poll before they brought him in as OC, I guarantee you Bobby Petrino would have led just about any poll for a new head coach. Like when we were talking about Pittman possibly getting fired this year, Petrino would probably lead that poll. Again, things have not. I mean, we've seen what's happened since they fired him. It's been a roller coaster ride, mostly with negativity. And the last good feelings that this program had was when Bobby Petrino was here. In those 2010, 2011 seasons. And I would even argue 2009, they were good. They just, they had some Willie Robson defensive coordinator issues, but I believe I might be getting my DCs mixed up. But this was definitely a hire they knew would generate they knew what was going to happen. And it did. And like I said, the after effects have been wild. I've been invited on several new popped up Razorback YouTube channels and podcasts. I've gone on one of them. It's fun. It's fun, and but that's kind of a sign when things have kind of turned the corner, because before that, in terms of fan hype, in other words, but before that, it was lousy. It was depressing. It was, man, I gotta do this all off season. This is going to be brutal. Now it's like I'm getting DMs about quarterbacks and people out of the portal and what are we doing at the offensive line coach job, which has been filled. What's going on here? Like, there's way more fan interaction than I have ever seen in all my time doing this.
So the crown jewel of Bobby Petrino's work from a quarterback standpoint is, of course, Lamar Jackson, one of the greatest to do it in the modern era. From an Arkansas standpoint and from a winning standpoint, of course, Ryan Mallett, God rest his soul, and the 21 wins stretch that you talk about, Cotton Bowl, Sugar Bowl, just the best that we've seen out of Arkansas football since sometime in the 90s, if not the 80s. So KJ Jefferson would have been a great one to see work with Bobby Petrino's offense, especially the 2 seasons he turned in in 21 and 22, 21 touchdowns, 4 picks, 24 and 5. I was looking at his numbers the other day, trying to brought back some memories because his first 75, 80 passes as a college football quarterback were well under 50%. When I first watched him play, I thought, okay, this is a running back trying to play quarterback. They're trying to fit him in there, but he just got better and better and better, worked at his craft, got some good coaching, and turned into a 67, 68% completion guy. And by the end of it, it may sound a little ridiculous now, but I was going back and forth between he and Jaden Daniels at the beginning of the season in terms of my off-season SEC quarterback rankings. He was that good. You mentioned some of the issues. He couldn't shoulder the load by himself. Rocket Sanders goes down, who could threaten defenses with a running game, and the offensive line was arguably the worst in the conference. So he just had issues. But unfortunately now he moves on. So my question to you is, number one, was that a surprising move by KJ Jefferson? And was there any bad blood there, or is it just a situation where he wants to move on and just give it a go somewhere else?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the situation is there right now. I think it's still kind of up in the air, and there's rumors that he may still, or I shouldn't say that he's going to come back, but there are people that feel like, he could still end up at Arkansas next year. Those are the minority. It's not going to happen. I've heard South Carolina, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. I've heard a number of schools. I don't know if there's bad blood. I've not heard that. At least with the coaching staff, if I had to put there's no secret fans were putting the blame on him, even though we could all agree how atrocious the offensive line was, how bad they were up front. Receivers had issues creating separation when he did have time to throw the ball, which wasn't very often. He shouldered the majority of the blame, which is wild to me. Fans tagging him on Twitter. I know his mom was probably not real thrilled with that. I think there's probably a little bit of we got to get out of town because things got bad and I'm getting all the blame. I wonder if there's some of that going on. I don't know if there is or not. I think at the end of the day, he still loves Hog fans. He knows the real ones aren't like the stuff that was being hurled at him throughout the season. I certainly don't believe he deserved the kind of hate that he got. It kind of reminds me of Brandon Allen for his first couple of years as a starter at Arkansas. He is still, when you bring his name up, there are people who just don't even want to acknowledge him as one of the better quarterbacks, one of the top 10 quarterbacks to ever play here. And the truth of the matter is his senior season here was incredible. And Dan Enos, by the way, was a part of that. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but you get the feeling that it might just be time for him to move on, even though, you know what, I think Petrino, if we believe that Petrino is the quarterback mastermind that he once was, that he can maneuver and facilitate phenomenal offenses, then why couldn't he do that with a guy who's proven in SEC play? Why couldn't he do that with KJ? Well, he's a RPO, quick read quarterback. That's all he is. Okay, but the problem is we never really got to see that. Not with a good offensive line and with better players around him. We never really got to see that this year. So I'm fascinated to see what happens here. I don't think KJ comes back. It's pretty much, it feels like a foregone conclusion that he's out. And I wonder what they do with the portal. Do they try and just stick it out with Jacoby Criswell if they don't get who they want out of the portal? There's been a name that's come across my screen now twice. It's been rumored they offered this kid out of Boise State. And I'm going to be real with you. KJ's better than this kid out of Boise State. Talon Green, not impressed with his numbers at all. I watched a little bit of his highlights. He is big. He's athletic, but you know what? His completion ratio was lower than KJ's this year. His clean pocket numbers were lower than KJ's this year. I mean, it's just that clamoring for something different. It's just like the put in Criswell crowd all season long. We had to deal with that. Well, guess what, Mark? We got to see him, and look what happened. And it's not against Criswell. It was the situation in which Criswell was thrown in. The guys around him did not elevate Criswell, and his offensive line did him no favors. So, I mean, he was sacked, I don't know how many times, 4 times. He fumbled the ball like 3 times. Completed, he didn't have great completion numbers. Didn't have a lot of yards of offense. He had a really good run, but other than that, you kind of, what happened was exactly what I told people was going to happen. It's going to be about the same or worse. Well, it was worse. And so, yeah, I get it. He's been here for a while, and he did everything he was supposed to do here in terms of breaking records. But if you're going to make a move from KJ, then it better be a good move. And there are some names in that portal I do like. I'm not sold on Green, the kid out of Boise State. I'm just not. You're going to have to do some more convincing for me. Again, this guy struggled this year. 11 touchdowns, just 9 picks. I think he was 57% completion percentage. Not good numbers. And again, I've looked at his further breakdown sheet as well, and it's horrible. So it was one bad year. I know I think he's a sophomore this year. He's got some eligibility. Maybe Petrino can build him up. But this is the guy that was reported to maybe at least get a phone call from Petrino. I haven't heard any other names yet, but at this point, give me KJ back. If this really is your option, I might be a little too harsh on Taylor Green. I'm just not sold on him. But I don't know the relationship. I know that him and Sam were close, very close. Sam was very thrilled that he came back this year. He made that very clear. I saw it in practice. I think he genuinely loves KJ. I think that's his boy. That's his player, and stuck with him all year long until he couldn't there at the end when KJ got hurt. And I think their dynamic is still good, but I really kind of wonder if they're just kind of feeling the vibe at Arkansas. It's just not. They might need to just move along, and that's probably where some of this is. And it could be too the Petrino thing, right? He may feel like he just doesn't fit in Petrino's system.
And there's a couple different types of quarterbacks out there. Of course, you've got your runners versus your pocket guys, but you also have your guys that have tons of experience. Grayson McCall, Will Rogers, that have just played so much football. And then you've got your other guys that have big reputations, haven't shown it in college yet. Brock Vandegrift, Georgia, Dante Moore at UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you go in regards to, do you want a mobile guy, a real dynamic runner? Do you have a short list or any guys that you're favoring at this point?
Well, there are a couple of guys I really like. I do. Grayson McCall, I do like. I mean, he's one of the top 8 quarterbacks currently in the portal. He's got good PFF numbers. His grading is like 74, almost 75. Tons of experience. 10,000 yards career passing, 1,100 yards. But I don't see him coming to Arkansas. I think Max Brosmer, another guy I was looking at, I think he committed somewhere. Tyler Van Dyke, I haven't gone into a deep dive on him yet. I know this year it didn't go according to plan. 19 touchdowns, 12 picks, completion percentage of almost 66%. I think I have his PFF grade here somewhere. It's 83.7 is his PFF grade. Like him a lot. I've watched him play. I think he would fit right in. Petrino, you mentioned, Jackson earlier. I mean, who would have thought he would coach in his offense a guy to the degree in which he did and have the kind of success, and him being a Heisman and everything? Who would have thought that? Before it was, he was recruiting guys like Brandon Allen, who was a pocket passer. He had Ryan Mount, we all know was, again, God rest his soul, but he was a 6'6" tower, not mobile quarterback. Tyler Wilson, not mobile quarterback. I think years ago, Brian Brom at Louisville was not a mobile quarterback, at least to my memory. That's been a long time ago. It's been like 20 years ago or whatever. But back when I would listen to Louisville on Sirius radio back in the day, my wife bought me a little Sirius radio, and I would listen because they were the talk of the town at the time. That offense was incredible. Who would have thought he would get a guy like Jackson and turn him into the monster that he did? Now, Jackson clearly just had raw talent. It's not like he had his work cut out for him with him, but so he has proven he can work with anything. I mean, give him a quarterback that's just willing to put in the work, understands the game of football at a high level or semi-high level, and can read a defense, fast and do what Petrino demands of that quarterback. We know he's got high standards. So remain coachable and be willing to put in the work. I think that's what Petrino's looking for, and someone who's capable. I have a hard time seeing him pass up if these guys really are on the table like a Tyler Van Dyke, I hope they muster up the NIL to go out and grab one of these guys. I know they need some help on the offensive line, but man, it's great to have a great offensive line. That's where it all starts. That's the catalyst to the whole thing, line of scrimmage play. But then it certainly helps to have someone back there who can operate your system at a high level. And Tyler Van Dyke is one that I think could. I think Will Rogers is now favored. I think he's gotten a crystal ball to go somewhere. I think Will Howard is still available, the Kansas State quarterback. We'll see. I right now, if I had to say I had a favorite, it would probably be Van Dyke, but it could also be Grayson McCall. It could be him as well. Again, I need to do some more deep diving on some of these guys, but I haven't heard anything yet other than who I mentioned, that Boise State quarterback, Talon Green. That's the only name I've heard in the last 48 hours.
TVD hit the scene in 2021 because of an injury to the starter.
Mm-hmm.
And then he comes in about game 3 or 4 and lights it up for 8 games. 350 a game, 3 or 4 touchdowns every game. They beat 2 of the best teams in the conference, NC State and Pitt, who won the ACC that year. And he was just off and running, newcomer of the year in the ACC. And so then going into 22, he's the guy. Well, they changed coaches, of course, and go to Mario Cristobal, which many people know, great recruiter, but he is not the guy himself to develop a quarterback, not at all. And they didn't have anyone, in my estimation, that was going to help Tyler Van Dyke continue to progress. Their receiver play last year, talking about 22, was pretty bad. And the offensive line was pretty bad. And he got hurt. And we're talking like rotator cuff, just wasn't right. Couldn't really, and tried to play through injuries, to his credit, kind of like a KJ Jefferson in some ways, and didn't just had a horrendous 22 season. He came out here in 23. And if you want to see the best of Tyler Van Dyke recently, watch the Texas A&M game. He tore them to shreds and looked great, made NFL throws. Guys were covered. He just, was laser shots all over the place.
I remember watching that game, and that was one of the reasons why he's on that list. Now, I thought he was going to go pro this year. I thought he was going to have that level of a year. He ends up throwing 19 touchdowns, 12 picks, completion percentage of 66%, 2,700 yards. Decent quarterback rating, but one of the things, Petrino's already seen him. He's seen him in person, so that's why I feel like they might, if they really want to pursue him, maybe they have a shot here. Petrino's already seen him play in person. So I wonder, if that's not a direction they take. But he feels like someone to me that he's going to have he can go just about anywhere he wants. So. Because of that, Arkansas may not get someone like that. But I remember when they got Felipe Franks out of Florida, we were told, yeah, no chance. You're not getting Felipe Franks. You're not doing that. Sam Pittman, no way. And they did. And he had a really good year in 2020, all things considered. So maybe they can. Maybe they can dive back into Florida and grab another quarterback. I think he is probably my number one guy right now. And like I said, I watched that A&M game. I was pretty impressed. I mean, they were flowing. They were moving the ball with ease.
And maybe they do get him because I have to think that the take on Tyler Van Dyke is like hot and cold, that a lot of people are extremely high on him and others aren't, because when he went south this year, again, they improved their offensive line considerably this year. So that wasn't an issue. Receiver play was better. He got off to a good start. And then he just started. We do a Miami show every week and have our guy Cam Underwood break it down. And Tyler Van Dyke just started making careless, stupid mistakes, not reading coverages, throwing into bad situations, just completely missing the guys that were open. And just, I don't know if that can be corrected if they pair him with the right guy like a Bobby Petrino, because again, the quarterback tutelage was a little underwhelming at Miami.
Well, here's the thing. They need a lot of work on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, this feels like a mass reset. And the good news is both the star tight ends are going to come back. I mean, so they say. We got to pump our brakes. We've seen this before. But Ty Washington and Luke Hasz, two guys who have really high standards. Luke Hasz was a big-time tight end out of high school, out of Bixby, Oklahoma. They're coming back. They're probably going to bring a couple of guys back off the offensive line, but I think they need a complete reset in the wide receiver room. Interior part of this offensive line's got the tackles have got to be better. The interior O line is probably where the real meat is for this Razorback offensive line. They've got some guys, they've got some dudes, I'm a little bit surprised we didn't see more rotation as the year went on, but they need a reset. Now you got AJ Green in the portal. I really like the kid out of Florida, Augustive, 4-star out of Florida. I like him a lot. They're bringing in Braylon Russell, big-time back out of Central Arkansas. They need a complete reset, and you're going to have to surround a guy like that. Like, you're going to have to convince him, yes, our offensive line's going to be better, and we're going to have weapons for you to throw to. I don't know that they can say that right now. Isaiah Centenia's got a lot of selling power or buying power. I like him. He'll be a redshirt sophomore next year. But outside of him, I don't know that I'm bringing back any wide receiver. And again, that's another one of those pillars of conversation Hog fans often disagree with me on. Tesla's got to come back. Armstrong was great. The 6'7" Broden, he's going to be great. Didn't see a lot from them this year, but at the same time, that's not their fault either. Again, it goes back to the offensive line. But I still feel like they need a complete reset, and it starts up front, and then it goes to the wide receivers, and we'll see what they do with the running backs. But with AJ Green in the portal, you're getting a little bit more room there to work with. But I don't know that you go out into the portal and you grab someone better than an AJ Green. I think AJ Green has a lot of potential, so a lot of work, and you're going to have to prove that you can do that you have the funds to make this possible, and you have to prove that to a guy like Tyler Van Dyke.
Ty Hudson, Tusk Talk with Ty, breaking down the Hogs in every sport right here on YouTube. Basketball season, of course. Baseball will be coming at some point here soon in the next few months, but looks to be a promising hoop season. So join Ty there, and of course all the football news off season, more than there's ever been before with the transfer portal. And National Signing Day is coming up as well. I see that Arkansas has offered 3 cornerbacks and 3 offensive linemen, which seems to be pretty much in step with their needs. So we shall see what they're able to get accomplished in the portal.
Yeah, a lot of work.
All right, man. Well, thanks for stopping by. Always like getting the breakdown, and wanted to hear your take on Bobby Petrino for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm glad when you reached out to him. I was kind of surprised you didn't reach out a little sooner, because it was pure mayhem here. And talking to you about it, it makes sense that to the outside world, this is a head scratcher, and I hadn't really thought of that until you brought that up. Here, it was like we're in the eye of the tornado. I mean, it was crazy. It's still crazy, especially like you mentioned with the portal and everything. And yeah, Petrino, it was already wild a little bit because of the coordinator situation and the offensive line coach. Kennedy out, got a new guy in there. But then when Petrino's name came across the ticker, it almost felt like the first time they hired him all over again. To some degree, it had that feeling to it, just wild. No one really thought that it was truly possible, and yet here we are.
And that shows you the difference between looking at it from the outside with no emotional attachment.
Yeah.
Obviously, what he has attached his name to is the embarrassment of that incident, and that's what people remember. So they see, why would they do that again? Versus when he's got football success tied to his name at Arkansas, that's what people that are invested in the football program and the success of the football program know Bobby Petrino for. It's, well, he's a winner. So yeah, we can look past that. He's a winner and we like him, and let's get him back here.
Yeah, there's a more morality conversation that's been had. I mean, for sure, there are plenty of Hog fans who are like, no, we can't do that.
And see, I don't have an issue with that in regards to, I believe that people should be held accountable. Absolutely. But
he was.
There should also be forgiveness, and let's move on. people
Yeah.
make mistakes.
The thing that kept coming back to me from folks who were against the hire was that, well, he hasn't changed. Look at what he did to UNLV, right? He was supposed to be the OC. And right in the middle of that, Jimbo Fisher offers him at A&M. And, of course but that's a business decision. I don't know. Was it probably not the best thing to do? Sure. I fine. But you know what? From what I understand, that's actually not super uncommon that a coach is in negotiations with one school and then a bigger opportunity comes along and they change direction. They go to that school. The big thing that he did was over a decade ago with the whole blonde on the back of the bike and all that stuff. Oh my gosh. Days of Our Lives. That was daytime drama here. I mean, so it's back, and hopefully this time it doesn't go up in flames again.
Almost literally. So, Ty, certainly whatever goes down, whether it goes good or goes bad, we will be tapping you on the shoulder to talk some ball.
I'll be here. I'll be covered no matter what happens. I mean, I realize some folks really don't like me, but and yet, the viewership has been insane, and that's why you're getting all these. You could get a pretty good idea of how excited a fan base is with how many new podcasts and YouTube channels start popping up. It's wild. It's a crazy time to be alive.
All right, Ty. Always good to see you.
Thanks for having me on, Mark. Appreciate you, man.